Hello there, and many thanks for joining us in this fresh edition of Business Week, the program that brings you top business stories that made the headlines during the course of this week, including special news features, market data, interviews, and much more. Of the biggest stories I tracked for you over the course of this week. Now, on the local front, the Central Bank of Nigeria has made an upward adjustment of the negotiable minimum interest rate payable on local currency savings deposits to 30% of the monetary policy rate. And now the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council has also unveiled its plans to kickstart a $750 million World Bank-funded program in January next year. The United Kingdom also says it will remove tariffs from up to 99% of goods imported from Africa and other developing countries, and this means 99% of total goods exported from Nigeria are eligible for duty-free access to the United Kingdom, saving about £500,000 worth of tariffs. And for more on the international front now, China has also slashed holdings of US Treasuries for a 7th consecutive month in June. That's the latest we have from the US Treasury Department, with investors closely tracking this measure in the wake of tensions between the world's two largest economies involving Taiwan. And in the United Kingdom, British consumer price inflation jumped to 10.1% in July, its highest since February 1982, up from an annual rate of 9.4% in June this year, intensifying the squeeze on households. And bringing you more now from the United States, President Joe Biden has also signed into law a $430 billion bill that is seen as the biggest climate package in U.S. history, designed to cut domestic greenhouse gas emissions, as well as lower prescription drug prices and even high inflation. Well, it's about a time now where we bring you special packages prepared by our correspondents. Don't go anywhere.
The quest to switch Nigeria to digital broadcasting began since 2006. After missing 3 consecutive deadlines to completing the digital switchover project, the federal government is now set to break the jinx. At this event, the Integrated Television Services signs an MOU with NTA Star TV to further deepen signal penetration and also solidify the roadmap for the rollout of the digital switchover project. All stakeholders involved believe the signing of the MOU between the two parties is a game changer for the media industry and the economy.
The Memorandum of Understanding, which is in line with the government white paper on the transition from analog to digital terrestrial broadcasting in Nigeria, lays the foundation for a working relationship between the two entities to drive the rollout of the DSO in the country.
After signing this MOU, the requisite broadcast infrastructure that ensures a seamless digital switchover across Nigeria through digital terrestrial television (DTT), they will also introduce and adopt a simultaneous technique to integrate free TV content and NTS Star content free TV.
I hope we can work together like brothers to face the challenge in the future. So we'll do our best and build up this beautiful structure for the media, and we will provide all of the good programs and the content.
The NBC believes that the signing of the MOU will ensure transition of more than 30 million TV households to digital broadcasting. The Commission says it will also start a vigorous and comprehensive publicity plan for the digital switchover within a week. TJ Swadio, TVC News, Abuja.
Operation of these ports will commence in September, 1 month from now.
The Minister of Transportation, Muazu Sambo, giving a definitive response to queries about when the Lekki Deep-Sea Port will commence operations. The minister, together with top officials of the Transportation Ministry and heads of the several maritime agencies, did his first official tour of port facilities in Lagos, including the Lekki Deep-Sea Port, which he says will become a major game changer in Nigeria's port operations.
This, like you know, should be the pride of all Nigerians. The first deep sea port in West Africa. It will take the largest ships in the world, 16.5 meters deep, create hundreds of thousands of jobs. Everything you want in a port is here.
Speaking about the failure of the China Civil Engineer Construction Company to provide 85% counterpart fund being part of the contract agreement for the rail project 2 years after, he threatens sanctions.
I gave them a deadline. What's the deadline? My deadline is, I think, 30th of October. 30th of October this year. If I don't get that money on ground, I know what to advise Mr. President to do.
How much are we looking at?
85% of the cost of the projects. There are 2 projects involved, Kano Kaduna and the Eastern Line Maiduguri Port Harcourt.
Responding to questions on the implication of the Lekki Deep Sea Port operations on existing seaports in the country, the Managing Director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, Mohammed Bello Koko, says it will drive competition.
Those ports will still be viable naturally, but what we have just done is to create alternative for importers and exporters where they decide to do business. So it's for the operators of those ports to also up their game, improve the speed at which they process cargo, whether it's in terms of clearance and so on and so forth. Feasibility studies have shown that these ports will still be viable.
There are high expectations that imports and export trade among other maritime businesses will increase substantially as government consents to the construction of more deep sea ports across the country. Ifunanya Eze, TVC News, Lagos.
And now let's bring you the feature on the show today as we take a look at the state of the Nigerian economy, how fragile it is right now, and what it will take to have a much more stable economic base. We will bring you details of this and much more in this next interview after this break. Thank you very much for still staying with us. Let's now deal with the crux of today's discourse as we discuss the Nigerian economy and moves by government at both subnational and national levels to manage through the current economic headwinds. This is reflected in the latest call from governors on the need for the presidency to take a much more decisive action in slimming the cost of governance, the adoption of more strategic fiscal and monetary policies to rein in inflation and other macroeconomic conditions we have here, as well as the reduction in the overall borrowing base we have in Nigeria. Now, these continue to remain on the front burner as the Buhari administration gradually counts down to take a bow, but also need to meet up with the legacies promised at the start of the administration. Well, joining me now virtually to discuss this and much more, I have Olusegun Elemo, Public Finance and Policy Analyst. Thank you so much for your time on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
That's quite an interesting take we're going to have today. Now, let's start really with the conversation and matters arising from the 33-point recommendations governors made to the presidency. The timing of this communication, the feasibility of the strategies here to stabilize the already fragile economy, and then now the expectations as we also saw a follow-up meeting held earlier on Wednesday over the state of the nation's economy, insecurity, healthcare, amongst others. Now, let's talk about the highlights, the most salient pointers that caught your attention when this presentation was made, and those that are too much of an ask, especially as this administration is exiting, and then we also have electioneering activities taking momentum.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Really, if I must say that I personally, feel that the governors aren't doing enough, very slow in policy recommendations, and it appears that they are not assessing the situation real time to be able to intervene when necessary. Yes, these recommendations are coming at this time, but like you pointed out, some people are saying that it's late. And really, the recommendations are coming quite late. But, like people say, it's rather better late than never. Some of the issues that the governors have raised are very key issues. One, on the issue of insecurity. Truly, there's nothing that can be done in a state of anarchy in a state of insecurity as we're currently in. The issue about removal of fuel subsidy, I think that it's high time we actually removed the subsidy. Only that the route in which the governors are suggesting that the subsidy be removed is not quite clear. And I've said in many forums that you can't have a blanket removal of fuel subsidy. We must apply a thinking cap to how the subsidy should be removed. And if you ask me how I think the subsidy should be removed, I would say that, number one, take off, the under recovery or whatever you call it, subsidy, take it off the books of the federal government and let the states implement subsidy. There is no reason whatsoever why the federal government should implement subsidy or pay subsidy on behalf of 36 states. It's absurd. It's not economically viable. It's not reasonable. So when it comes to states, what you do is that you provide targeted subsidy, and these governors should be able to do that, implement it in their state. Number one, they need to collect the data, who required to be subsidized. You target public transportation, and then you target the MSMEs. The reason you are targeting public transportation is because you don't want, at this time, very critical, you don't want anyone to hike the price of transportation because it's going to affect many other areas of the economy. And then again, for the MSMEs who rely on generators, to power their businesses, then you target them. So you then give these governors the responsibility to enumerate these people. Number one, once you target these MSMEs and you are subsidizing them, it means that you also collect taxes, which will also improve the IGR of the state. So I think that it's very simple. But when the minister says, or the governors are saying that, a blanket removal of subsidy, I don't think it can work because it will further, impoverish the people and widen the inequality, gap. Other issues around where, the civil servant, the age the civil servant should retire, I don't agree with the governors on that. I certainly don't agree with the governors on that because already we have unemployment at this, high level in the country today. If you say that people should, retire at the age of 50, it certainly doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because what is the benefit for them? Now you want to take people away from employment and put them, off employment where they cannot earn anything. Even right now that they are earning, they can't earn to live. Because many people today, NSC will tell you the minimum wage is not actually sufficient for upkeep of an average citizen or family of four. And I think some of the recommendations are good, some of them needs to be revised, and some of them needs to be thrown out, outright.
Okay, now, but really, as part of the highlighted issues we also have here is the elimination of the petrol subsidy or under-recovery, as government would describe it, and also the need to expedite privatization of non-performing assets, reduce the fiscal deficit to no more than 2% of the GDP, come between the range of 2023 to 2025, and also looking at the reduction of duplications of projects to reduce revenue leakages. These really have to take a much more stronger political will than the obvious fiscal and monetary policies to counter some of the current anomalies we have here in the country, wouldn't you say? We have recommendations like that of budget, monitoring, implementation and following the money. But still, at the end of the day, a strong political will beyond the current calculations must be developed. What are your thoughts on these?
I would say that I agree with you on the issue of political will. I think political will is the bane of the economic crisis that we are faced with today. And indeed, if you have an honest leader who is ready and willing to work for development and improved living conditions for the people, I think some of these issues are not unrealistic, and it's not something that cannot be implemented. But like you said, the issue of the idea of political will. On the issue about duplication of prayer, I think that's one of the issues that, like you said, organizations like Budget have raised over the years. And see, we don't have as much revenue crisis as we have expenditure problem. Yes, there are, and I always say this, Nigeria has revenue issues, and we need to improve on that. But the little we generate and we put to use through the budget, how is it implemented? How do we see results on the ground? No. For instance, in 2019 audit report, which is the latest that we have, because we don't have audit report for 2020 yet, and this is 2022 going to a close. In the 2019 audit report, you realize that 70 agencies of government, their budget was about 3.2 trillion. The funds released to them was about 2.2 trillion. Out of that 2.2 trillion, 455 billion was not accounted for. That's about 20%. If you take that across board, the entire 1,000 or thereabout agencies of government under the purview of the federal government, and you say 20% of the budget was not accounted for, and mostly on capital projects, because they cannot be on salaries. 100% of salaries are covered, 100% of overheads are covered. So what we are talking about, the inefficiencies are on capital projects, which are supposed to reflect the economy and advance development. The economy is in dire strait. We are in a very critical condition, and at this junction, we need someone who is thinking and who can prepare a smooth way for an incoming government in 2023.
Okay, then now let's also look at this from this perspective. To what extent do you think, if these are not achievable in the short term, should form the basis for accountable governance and also set the pace for the incoming government and the strategies for economic development in the coming years?
There is no better way to emphasize the need for an accountable government, especially going into 2023. It appears that this present government is not willing to take up much responsibility as required. But again, is that many of the political candidates that have put themselves forward, we haven't seen their policy document. We haven't seen what they want to do for the economy, what they want to do for the security situation. We have only seen, statements. We have only seen, briefs. We haven't seen a comprehensive, document that civil society, think tank groups, research institutions can analyze and say, yes, this is what and we can critique and say, no, we can't go in this direction. This is where we're coming from. And we can also make policy recommendations and say, based on what you think you want to do and based on the implementation strategy that you are putting forth, we feel that this is what is best. But nobody has put forward anything. I think there's only one political party candidate that has put forward something, but there's even a brief. It's not a comprehensive document. So we're going to wait for, and we're waiting earnestly, and campaign is going to start next month. And so we're waiting earnestly to see their policy documents and also seeing their strategy for improving accountability, promoting transparency, so that, because all of these fiscal crises that we are faced with the economy, it also borders on how transparent we have been, how accountable we are. We cannot, overemphasize the need for transparency and accountability going into 2023. And whatever policy dialogue we're going to have, whatever debates, political debates that will be held, these subjects must be on the front burner.
Okay, now let's shift our attention just a little bit away from the core of this recommendations we've had from governors. One of the biggest stories we've had for this week and even this quarter really is the fact that we are seeing increase in the inflationary pressure Nigeria has to deal with. Part of the quest for working policies is the adoption of more hawkish stance in the monetary policy direction of the Central Bank of Nigeria to rein in inflation. Now, with the 19.74% that we've recorded so far, do you think the rate hike, the movement we've seen by the MPC has had any chance at reining in inflation as we all had expected?
You see, what is happening with the monetary policy authorities, or the authority, the central bank? You see, the central bank is in a very, very tight situation as we speak. All of the policy options they've thrown up in the last 1 or 2 years haven't yielded much gains. So this idea of increasing interest rates on Naira savings, yes, on paper, really, in theory, it should mop up the inflation, because it means that you will encourage savings, and then you will help to, stimulate investment, capital savings, and stimulate investment, which will certainly improve the economy and accelerate development. So in theory, it will work like that. But again, is anybody thinking about the impact of the forex crisis that we're in? Is anybody thinking on that and how that will impact this policy? How many people are willing to save their naira today? How many people are willing to save in naira today? I think these are some of the issues. These are the realities. So like I said, in theory, the policy is supposed to work, but in practice, will it work? Because there are other factors that are competing for savings. I don't see anyone who has significant amount of naira and who's going to pull that in the bank, no matter whether you are the central bank says and has directed banks to provide 30% of MPR for interest rates in naira. So people are going to be willing to save their money in naira with the benefits they will get, that 30% of the MPR they will get from their savings in naira. Will it be much better when they save their money in other currencies, or where they even take the currencies out of the country, their monies out of the country? So these are some of the issues. But again, is that the central bank needs to do all it needs to do to stabilize the economy and ensure that it continues to intervene on the crisis that we are in today. Of course, I do expect the central bank to say that they want to incentivize people saving in foreign currencies. No. Of course, it has to be in local currencies. But are people willing to save in local currencies today? That 30% of MPR, is it enough benefit to encourage people to save in local currencies? So I think these are some of the issues. And the central bank will probably have to assess this new policy over the next quarter and see how it has improved the situation. And if it hasn't, they will probably need to come up with a revised policy.
Okay, Segun, we just have to wrap up now, and we have to take a critical look at food inflation. With rising insecurity, low food production base here in the country, the logistic challenges, processing and storage, what's your forecast of how bad the situation might just worsen if not much has changed at this point in time, especially for the fact that we're also dealing with external shocks beyond our control? We saw an insignificant decline of about 0.01% on a month-to-month basis between June and July this year, looking at food inflation. But that's not enough to excite any market at all.
Well, I understand that in terms of insecurity, I understand that we are making some gains. And I understand that our military are achieving, some wins in terms of insecurity. And I really pray that they're able to sustain the momentum. And I also understand that the president will be visiting Maiduguri in the next couple of days or thereabout, perhaps to also strengthen the morale of our military personnel, fighting this battle for us. And we really commend them for holding forth for us in this regard. But it's affecting, a sector like the agriculture, which is very, very important. You see, the reason agriculture is very, very important is because of our population. If you have a population of over 200 million people and you cannot feed yourself, that's a call to anarchy on its own. That's a crisis. And so if you're talking about subsidy, this is one sector that should actually be subsidized. This is one sector that we should target, subsidy, and people should, there should be strict implementation of whatever policy that is adopted, and all stakeholders should be monitoring what's happening in that sector. And that's why I'm saying that let states implement the subsidy. For instance, now, some states would rather subsidize heavily agriculture because they have the potential to produce the food. A state like Benue State, for instance, would probably focus more on subsidizing agriculture than subsidizing petroleum products. The food inflation issue is one big issue. People are hungry, there's a saying that a hungry man is an angry man, and that's why you will have insecurity, increasing. And without taming insecurity, you can't have an environment to produce food. So you can see that there are interdependent factors. I feel like I said, let's attend to this issue. But one way to solve some of these crises that we have on our hands today is to devolve power. and allow state governments to implement their subsidy and let them determine how and which sector they want to subsidize. And you can then, activate stakeholders at subnational level to monitor how these subsidies are implemented to curtail the excesses of chief executives and governors of states. But this idea of forcing down policies from the center down to subnational, it has not worked for over 60 years. It's not working right now. I don't see it working post-2023. And whoever is coming needs to start thinking differently.
Thank you so much for your time on the show today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Olusegun Elemo.
Thank you for having me.
Well, just before we go now, here are graphic details of the Nigeria Electricity Report for the year 2021, which covers energy billed, revenue generated and customers by the discos, as prepared by the National Bureau of Statistics. And that's it on this edition of Business Week. Many thanks for watching so far. From me, it's a sign out. Bye for now.